In 1898, a humble Swedish farmer named Olof Öhman unearthed a mysterious slab of grey-wake rock on his farm near Kensington, Minnesota. On the stone surface were etched unknown symbols and cryptic runes in a strange foreign language. Soon, the question of this mystery stone's origin would place it squarely at the center of one of history's most fiercely debated mysteries. But more than that, the story etched into this stone recounts a harrowing tale of Vikings on the edge of the map, fighting for their lives. This story is personal to me. As a young boy, I grew up in this very place, a young Scandinavian diaspora kid growing up under the mighty statue of Big Ole. I didn't come to appreciate the significance of this local history until I became older. So what is it about this land that seems to have drawn Scandinavians to it for 100 or maybe nearly 1,000 years? If the runestone is genuine, it proves that the Norse managed to explore lands further west than anyone had imagined. So I decided I'll go on a journey to find this stone myself and see what we can uncover.
It's good to be back. And that is the King, Alexandria, there. So we're here at the statue of Big Ole, and he's a bit of a local legend here in Alexandria. I grew up in this town under his shadow, under our big Viking Ole's shadow, and I didn't appreciate as much growing up just the significance of the runestone and the history of this place. It's really this incredible local folk legend, the story with a lot of mystery behind it, and trying to figure out what's going on with the runestone, what kind of connections does this place have. So we know that Vikings came to America. Now I want to find out, did they actually come all the way west? Did they leave their mark all the way here right in Minnesota? Let's find out.
As the story goes, Olof Öhman was clearing land that he'd recently bought after moving to Minnesota with his wife and kids. As he was plowing the crest of a small hill which rose above the wetlands, he came across a stunted poplar tree. Looking closer, he saw that a slab of stone was half buried in the soil, with the top of the stone tangled in the roots of the tree. After excavating the stone, Öhman's young son saw that there was something peculiar about it. Wiping away the accumulated dirt and grime, markings were found to cover the surface and the sides of the stone. Wondering what this was, and assuming it to be some sort of, quote, Indian almanac, Olof sent a copy of the inscription to the University of Minnesota, where academics immediately dismissed it as a hoax and a forgery. And so, after a while, once the Depression hit, Olof sold off the stone to the Historical Society. The Öhman family were accused of being liars by some, and their name was dragged through the mud. But there were still many who believed the Öhmans had stumbled upon something long before their time. Could the academics at the University of Minnesota have been wrong? Certainly some of them believed it to be credible from the forensic dating, but with the linguists being the primary point of contention from scholars. We know from the archaeological record that Vikings established at least one colony in Newfoundland in the 11th century, which has been discovered already by archaeologists, and the Norse settlement continued in Greenland from the 10th through the 14th century, putting the later dates of Greenland life within the time of the expedition. Could Norse from Vinland have tried to make a desperate attempt to resettle America as their colony faced collapse from cold and starvation around the time of these Norwegians and Swedes passing through? We can only speculate. A direct translation of the inscription reads, 8 Gotlanders and 22 Norwegians on this exploration journey from Vinland far to the west. We had a camp by 2 shelters 1 day's north from this stone. We were fishing one day. After we came home, found 10 men, red from blood and dead. Ave Maria, save us from evil. On the side of the stone it reads, there are 10 men by the inland sea to look after our ships, 14 days' journey from this peninsula. Year 1362. What is rarely talked about in discussions on the runestone is the actual story itself. For what some speculate to be a romantic fabrication, it hardly describes a wonderful land predestined to be given to the Nordic settlers by Providence. If anything, it reads as a warning.
So while the runestone is now located in the Runestone Museum here in Alexandria, it was actually found originally in a town called Kensington, about 20 minutes southwest of here. We're looking around, I'm not seeing it on any of the maps. It just says where we are, it says where the trails are. Where the hell did Olof Öhman actually find this rock? Okay, so maybe, all right, please tell me this place is open. Is there no way to find? The second time's the charm. And, hey, this one's open. All right, wow, hey, look at this place. Beautiful carvings here. So unfortunately at the museum, they don't let you take video, only photos apparently. But you've got a beautiful recreation here that, yeah, that's incredible. I just have a hard time believing, looking at this, that a Swedish man from Gotland who, how would he have the knowledge to possibly know how to carve ancient runes? Well, even if they were flawed, how would he have enough knowledge to know how to carve such a thing? With the runic alphabet, with Futhark.
Scandinavian explorers traveled deep into the unknown wilds of Vinland, through the Great Lakes and far into the interior. As the writer of the runestone was a day north, fishing with 9 of the other men, they returned to their camp and found 10 of their men dead, covered in blood. Now what could have killed a camp full of 10 strong Norse adventurers? These were the sons of Vikings, brave, tough men who traveled across the Atlantic into a dangerous wilderness. Could it have been a bear that killed them? These men know what bears are and likely would have noticed wounds from such an attack. And it's hard to imagine a single bear killing 10 men. Bears and wolves only traveled this far south in Minnesota on occasion, preferring to stay north. But in the 14th century, the northern hemisphere was in what is known as the Little Ice Age. Could these colder temperatures have driven larger predators into this region? The text indicates that the landscape was different, describing them being on a peninsula, whereas now the site of the stone excavation is a hill on a marshland.
So yeah, we've got Olof Öhman here. I've known some old Swedish men in my day. This man looks trustworthy to me. I feel like he'd be telling the truth. I mean, maybe he did fake it. It just, where did he get the training to be able to, seemingly get the history accurate? Very strange. Also, look at this man. Does this man look like a Catholic to you? Does this man look like a Catholic? He purposefully puts in the inscription AVM, Ave Virgo Maria, this old Swedish Lutheran man. And I'm supposed to just believe that he's crafting this story that's supposed to ignite sort of Lutheran, Swedish, romantic nationalism. It's hard for me to believe that. Also, if he's trying to fake and create this hoax to promote Scandinavian nationalism, bring that here to America, then why does he write what's essentially a horror story and a warning on this tablet? Well, all right, now does this map have it? Where's the... Okay, okay, so they do have the discovery site. All right, the hunt is back on. Here's the discovery site. So we're gonna find our way over here and actually get to the source where these Vikings left the stone. All right, let's find it. All right, now, is anything written on? What is that?
Looks like crappy runes.
Yo, look at that. We're onto a mystery here, boys. The game is afoot.
Looks like somebody's trash.
No, that's a part of the mystery. This was left here by design. Can we feel the Viking energy here? On this spot was found a stone dated 1362, relating the story of a band of 30 men ambushed on the shore of a lake one day's journey north of here. Historians have identified these intrepid men as the Paul Knutsen expedition, sent into the west in 1355 by King Magnus Eriksson of Norway and Sweden. Stone found by Olof Öhman, 1898. So as Olof Öhman is clearing his land here for farming, comes across this old poplar tree. In the roots, his son notices that there's a stone that's been curled into the roots and has strange markings on it. So they excavate the stone, they pull down the tree, and lo and behold, there's the runestone. At the time, they don't really know what it is. Öhman goes in and sort of scratches out all the little markings where the inscriptions were, and they think it's some sort of Indian almanac. They're not familiar with the writings. They don't realize that these are actually Norse runes. These are Viking runes. This is Futhark. And if the story is to be believed, this is actually the site of something pretty horrific.
The surviving half of the away party decides to abandon the camp. They travel a day's journey south and arrive here, where we're standing. And while they camp at this point, they carve a runestone right here. Why is it so important that they leave a runestone here? Are the men lost at this point, abandoned to fate, as they've presumably traveled south for a day, rather than east towards the Great Lakes where their kinsmen are stationed? It sounds to me like they don't know if they'll be able to make it back to the Great Lakes alive, and so take the time to carve this runestone and leave their record for whoever finds it. Could they have been attacked by Native Americans? It's certainly a strong possibility, although no descriptions of anyone other than Northmen, no Skraelings are mentioned. Despite traveling a day's journey south, these hardened men are still clearly shaken and don't believe they are safe yet. They write, quote, "Ave Maria, save us from evil." Someone, or something intent on death, was stalking these Vikings through the woods where we stand now. From the order of the runes, it sounds like they intend to leave the runestone in their camp here and travel east, back to the inland sea, where the others are waiting with their ships to cast off. We have no records, no evidence if they ever made it back. Did they get lost in the dark forests? Did they get ambushed by natives? Or did any of them make it back to their ships alive? What's so frustrating about this runestone, despite being straightforward and plain in its inscription, is how much it leaves to the imagination. What was the purpose of these men's expedition? Was it purely for exploration? By 1362, although technically several generations after the formal Viking era, Scandinavia was heavily Christianized, and some have speculated that the purpose of this trip was not purely for exploration, but potentially as a part of a missionary expedition. Could these men have been traveling all this way to try to evangelize to the Skraelings that they'd heard about in the previous Icelandic sagas? Or were these men on a quest to settle the land and to expand the Vinland colonies beyond their previous attempts? Or could these men have heard rumors of riches and wealth and treasure, or simply been on an expedition to test the limits of their prowess and explore the edge of the map? But whatever they encountered, whatever managed to kill 10 Northmen at once, they were clearly shaken and decided to turn back. There's so much we don't know about this era of history. Were there more established native settlements or cities like have been found in other parts of North America? Tragically, the archaeological and material evidence is scant. Many of the linguists claim that Olof Öhman carved these writings in modern Swedish. As I'm no expert in Futhark, what I do not know is the process by which Futhark is translated into Swedish. And so, could there have been a modernization process during that translation? But how much has the Swedish language evolved from the time that he wrote the Inscription to 1362? How Latinized was Swedish at that era? These are certainly questions for others with more experience to explore. But when I think about why this particular runestone, this lone stone in Minnesota, holds so much value to so many people, including me, it makes me realize just the poverty of history that we have in America. When you walk through the woods and the forests and the natural places of Minnesota, you realize that much of this land, if there had not been a farm there previously, has never been developed. To our understanding, no one has ever tilled the soil, no one has ever built a structure here. When we walk around this land, we don't have castle ruins, we don't have the remains of previous generations that have built and cultivated the earth in the same way that you have in the rest of the old world. The natives largely left the land untouched. As they disappeared, the land became strangely empty, strangely quiet. The challenge in America, especially once you get further west, is that it's hard to connect yourself to a history and a series of generations that have lived in this land and built on it longer than 150 years. There's a strange quiet to the land the further west you go in America, as though no man had ever been here to begin with, as though God had created an entire continent just for the deer and the pheasants and the coyotes and the mourning doves with their sorrowful greeting. How can men dwell in a place for 10,000 years, living as though time would go on for eternity, only then to largely be swept away within 100 years, with only whispers and the faintest hints and arrowheads to indicate there was ever a man here at all? It's not without reason that the forests of North America are viewed as more haunted than those of Europe. And if that strange runic stone is to be believed, the Norsemen who came here many hundreds of years before I did encountered their own haunted forests and paid a heavy toll in blood. The inscription on this plaque pointed us to a critical piece of evidence on this matter that I hadn't heard or seen brought up elsewhere.
Historians have identified these intrepid men as the Paul Knutsen expedition.
And this comes from a fellow diaspora member, a kinsman I can strongly relate to in spirit, Hjalmar Holand. Born in 1872 in Holland, Akershus, Norway, Hjalmar moved to the US at the age of 13 and eventually settled in Wisconsin, becoming an anthropologist who specialized in the history of Norwegians and their diaspora. Hjalmar Holand was particularly fascinated with the history of the Kensington Runestone. Hjalmar Holand asserted the significance of a piece of evidence for Norse exploration deeper into North America, which often gets ignored when discussing Kensington Runestone and other possible expeditions by the Norse, whether recorded or lost to time. In the 1340s, accounted for by a later surviving Danish record from the 16th century, a Norwegian official named Paul Knutsen was assigned to travel to Greenland and to report back on conditions there. The remote Norse outposts had lacked a bishop for years, and the church feared for the survival of Christianity in those isolated settlements. The timing and description of the record matches perfectly with the nature of the expedition accounted for in the Kensington Runestone. In 1951, the Smithsonian Institute published a translation by William Thalbitzer of this particular letter. It reads, Kig Magni, letter of command given to Paul Knutsen at Anarm to sail to Greenland. Magnus, by the grace of God, King of Norway, Sweden, and Scone, sends to all men who see or hear this letter good health and happiness in God. We desire to make known to you that you are to take all the men who shall go in the Nor, whether they be named or not named, from my bodyguard or other men's attendants, or of other men who you may induce to go with you, and that Paul Knutsen, who is to be in commandant on the Nor, shall have full authority to name the men whom he thinks are the best, both as officers and men. We ask that you accept this our command with a right good will for the cause, as we do it for the honor of God, and for the sake of our soul and our predecessors, who have introduced Christianity in Greenland and maintained it to this day. And we will not let it perish in our days. Let it be known that whoever breaks this our command shall feel our displeasure and pay us in full for the offense. Executed in Bergen, on the Monday after Simone and Judea Day, in the 36th year of our rule, Herr Ormer Ostenson, our Lord High Constable, set the seal. Soon after this order, the Black Death swept through the north like a scythe, killing countless nobles and clergy. If Knutsen's voyage occurred amidst this chaos, any trace was lost. Nevertheless, some historians propose that Paul Knutsen's elusive expedition did end up reaching Greenland, and then later, upon assessing the situation, perhaps with people disappearing seemingly into thin air, and hearing of rumors or records of them traveling into North America, later pursued after them much further west into the interior of North America to discover their lost colonists. Hjalmar Holand also proposed that the trait of blondism and other light features such as gray and blue eyes, which were noted with surprise by the 18th century European explorers as being found among Indians from the Mandan on the upper Missouri River. Hjalmar Holand proposed that this phenotypic trait could have been brought through the blood of Swedish and Norwegian explorers, or even Greenlanders who had abandoned their island and traveled deep into the continent. Both the Welsh and the Irish as well have mythology of their own people traveling and discovering North America, with mythology of Prince Madoc voyaging with a crew in the 12th century to journeying to roughly modern-day Georgia. Later in the 19th century, Tennessee Governor John Sevier had a quote from him written on a plaque that the Welsh had originally built an ancient stone fortification at what became Fort Mountain State Park.
Alright, so I'm here at Fort Mountain State Park. At the top is a very mysterious stone wall architecture.
According to Governor John Sevier, the Cherokee believed that, quote, a people called Welsh, unquote, had built a fort on the mountain long ago to repel Indian attacks. Accounts such as these continue to drive endless theories and questions about pre-Columbian contact between Europeans and native peoples in the Americas long before Columbus. Closely related to this is Icelandic Bishop Gisli Oddson's 1637 attempt to compile and produce a history of Arctic colonies of the Norse. He dated that the Greenlanders fell away from Christianity in 1342, end quote, after having abandoned all good morals and true virtues, turned to the people of America. Some also think that Greenland lies very near to the western lands of the world. From this it came about that the Christians began to refrain from the voyage to Greenland. Although land can shape people, people as well shape the character and the nature of the land. Over hundreds of generations, infusing it with their own character, their own sort of magic and essence, through the development of structures, through the lives and the stories that they told, and the battles that were fought, and the families that lived in these places. So in America, especially for those of European stock, although there is much land that is incredible, virgin wilderness, largely untouched by mankind, there is a sort of alienation from it. It's also in part why European man has been so reckless with his development, so willing to pave over the vast expanse that seems infinite, seems unbounded, and cover it in ugly advertising, in car lots, in neon billboards, and in cheap construction that desecrates the natural beauty of the land. We did not treat it like a hard-earned inheritance. Something to be lived in, to be used, and then to be discarded. The natives chose to leave it undeveloped. And so, although keeping its natural God-given splendor, neglected to leave an inheritance of beauty and craft in the land. To find an old, almost magical stone, buried in the gnarled roots of an old tree, that tells the story of our very ancestors coming to this land 1,000 years before us, through the harshest conditions and fighting unseen terrors to leave their mark on this place, tells us that we are part of a grander story, stretching far back into time and continuing far into the future. Tells us that there's meaning here in this land, in this seemingly untouched, inhuman wilderness, that there is a history that we are a part of, that this seemingly barren and unmarked land is part of a much larger, longer, and deeper story, that there is significance in this place and our time in it. Perhaps Olof knew that to be true as well.